Hi guys, I'm Erica. Welcome to Hack Your Health. Today I have a very exciting recipe for you, which is how to make salmon jerky. I found that online there's a lot of recipes which use either soy sauce or coconut aminos or other ingredients that are excluded on various elimination diets used for healing autoimmune diseases. So this recipe is just the bare bones. It's just going to be salt, honey, and salmon. So here's the fish. This was $52 Canadian for about 4 pounds or 1.75 kilograms of fish. So it's a pretty small salmon. This is a previously frozen salmon, so it is sashimi grade, which means it can be eaten safely raw. The temperature is very low when using a dehydrator, so it's not high enough to kill microorganisms. So there's a bone here that goes in a circle. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the salmon along that bone. Going to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. And then I'm just going to chop the head right off. I'm going to keep the head to make a soup with later. To fillet a salmon, you basically want to cut it all the way along the spine and separate it from this backbone. I am not an expert filleter. I'm just showing you guys because that's what this video includes. So once you've got that initial cut, you can just go down and cut through the different layers right along this bone. Okay, so there's my first fillet. It may not be as perfect as in the grocery store, but I'm pretty happy with this. And I like to leave the skin on, but I'm gonna cut off this little fin. I cut up the first side, and I'm gonna put this, the leftover bits, and the rest of this that I'm going to use to make a soup with, I'm going to put all that in the fridge while I cut up this other half. So after all of that cutting and filleting, I have this really big bowl of salmon pieces. We are going to make our brine. So we're using honey and salt and water, and that's it. You can't go on removing all ingredients because the sugar and the salt preserve the fish and keep it from going bad. So the salt and the sugar are really important. That's why they're traditionally used. I'm going to use a heaping tablespoon of salt. So there's a heaping tablespoon. A little bit fell in, but really not very much. This is honey. You could also try maple syrup. Or if you aren't allergic to different things, you can just use plain sugar. So I'm going to put in 3 big tablespoons of honey. That's going to be the third one, and I'm just going to use this spoon for stirring so I don't have to wait 45 minutes for all the honey to get off of it. So this is what our stuff looks like. And then I am going to add 1 cup of water. And actually, I'm going to use 1 1/4 cups just because I'm a little concerned that it won't completely cover all of the salmon. So I'm going to turn my stove on to medium temperature and pour in the water. Really, the only purpose of this is to dissolve the salt and the honey into the water to make the brine. If I use cold water, it just won't ever dissolve. So the reason why we're adding heat is not because this really needs to be cooked, it's just because it needs to be dissolved. It's pretty hot now and the salt has dissolved, so I'm gonna turn off the heat. And now we just need to wait for this to actually cool down again because it can only be slightly warm when we put the salmon in it. If you put it in hot, obviously it will cook the salmon, and that's not what we're going for here. In the future, I would recommend making this brine first and then cutting up the salmon, because cutting up the salmon took a good amount of time, so this would have cooled off by the time I finished cutting the salmon had I chosen to do it in that order. So for the marinating, I am going to put these into a different bowl. Basically, you want to use some kind of shallow bowl, and this bowl isn't shallow, but the bottom part is, so I think that from the bowls that I own, this is the best option. And now my brine has cooled down, so it's just barely warm. And I'm just gonna pour it over my salmon. There we go, that actually looks pretty good. I'm just gonna make some adjustments here. And there we are, that's pretty good I think for soaking. So I'm gonna leave this in the fridge. You can do it anywhere from 2 hours to about 24 hours. It's been about 4 hours and now I'm going to drain the brine off of the salmon. I'm just gonna use this colander and strain the brine out into the sink. This is what the salmon looks like now. This is the dehydrator that I'm gonna use. It says Open Country Sportsman's Kitchen. So this is actually my friend's dehydrator. I'll put the link to the one that I actually own in the description box if you are looking for one, because that's one that I've used before. I've never used this dehydrator, but they are all pretty similar to one another. Basically, all you need to do is space them out evenly. And basically, if you put them too close together, then it will take a really long time for them to dry because the air needs to be circulating in between the different pieces of salmon. The first time I made salmon jerky was when I had just started the specific carbohydrate diet, so quite a few years ago. And I live in the city, but I'm from an island, and there was a person that started talking to me on the ferry, and they gave me a whole salmon because it was a person who was a fisherman and just had a lot of salmon, and he gave me one, and it was one of the nicest things that a stranger has done somehow. And I made salmon jerky, and it got me by for snacks for a really long time because I could just take a couple pieces to university with me, and it was like a really good treat that was specific carbohydrate diet friendly, really portable, and it was really, really helpful while I was on the diet. So if you end up not using any of these layers, just leave them out. You only need to use the number that you are currently using to put food on. This turned out to be the perfect number of layers for me. The top one only has a few, but that's okay. So I'm just gonna wash my hands and then I'll put the top on and get the temperature going. So it actually looks like this dehydrator only has one temperature setting. The one that I'm used to using has different settings depending on whether you're dehydrating meat or fruit or vegetables or all the numerous things that you can make with the dehydrator. And in that case, you would set it to about 150 degrees Fahrenheit. This dehydrator only has an on and off button. Here it is. But since it's called Open Country Sportsman's Kitchen, I'm gonna go ahead and assume that this is made for making jerky and it will be the right temperature. And there you go. I'm just gonna turn it off again. I'm gonna leave this on for about 4 hours, and I'm gonna check it after about 2 hours because I find that some of the smaller pieces can dehydrate faster. It's been about 4 to more like 4.5 hours, and the jerky is now at a chewy texture. So I've turned off the dehydrator and I'll show you what it looks like now. So as you can see, I turned all of them so that the skin was facing down. And the next time I do that, I'm definitely gonna put them all skin side down because you can see here that parts of it stuck to the plastic because as it was dehydrating and getting smaller, they shrunk so that they were kind of gripping onto these. So here you have it. This is $50 worth of salmon jerky. I don't buy jerky in this quantity very often, but it really is a lot. There you have it, guys. That's the autoimmune friendly version of jerky that was kind of an experiment today because I found that I wanted to make this good for everyone with autoimmune diseases, and it seemed like either you had to use soy sauce or replace it with coconut aminos. And people who are avoiding sugar can't eat coconut aminos, and people who are avoiding soy obviously can't eat soy sauce. So the first time that I made this jerky, I used soy sauce as the brine, and that was definitely saltier than this time. So since this was my first time not using the soy sauce, I would definitely recommend using more salt. I would recommend using at least 2 heaping tablespoons and probably 3, but that definitely depends on taste, although it will also affect how long it stays good. The saltier it is, the longer it will be preserved by the salt, basically because salt is a preservative. And the same thing with the honey. If you wanted to make it more sweet, you could do that too. So this is a pretty mild tasting jerky, just so you guys know how this particular recipe turned out. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please let me know by pushing like. And if you'd like to see more of my health related videos, then you can always subscribe. And I'd love to hear your comments and your feedback and your suggestions or versions that you've made of this recipe. If you added more or less of the ingredients or anything else that you've done to adjust it, because this is an experimental recipe. This is like the bare bones, and you can add to it as you wish. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.